Hey everybody, it's Andrew here from the Media Lunch Break podcast, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that a fan of the show and a personal friend of mine brought up on Facebook. He had a question about reviewing a podcast specifically, and he asked and tagged me, how do you do that? What are the specifications? What are the ramifications for reviewing anything, let alone something that is just an audio medium? So I thought I'd get into how we do it at the Media Lunch Break, Chris and I, and some tips and tricks on how you can really start to dive into what makes a podcast good or bad, as well as anything, really. So, I think the first thing to do that's very important is to recognize that quality comes in different mediums. And by that I mean there is technical quality, something that you can point to. There's a study for this, there's an education, and there's something that everyone in the medium and in the realm that you're reviewing agrees this is good, this is bad. There are things like if you're reviewing a video, resolution. Is it a high resolution video? Is it a low resolution video? That's something that is easily recognizable. The higher the resolution, the better the quality. The lower the resolution, the worse the quality. It's also important to separate that from artistic quality, which has some leeway in it. There's still things that you can study. People still go to school for art, obviously, for acting, for audio, for vocal work. There are decisions that you can make as a performer or as a vocalist. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and they're not inherently good or bad things. The last category to separate from the other two is personal taste. How it affects you personally in a way that maybe isn't dependent on quality or the choices that the people in the podcast made. Personal taste isn't dependent on someone's technical skill or even artistic skill. It really all depends on what the viewer or listener appreciates the most about what they're listening to. So the first category is technical quality. Now, in this case, we're talking about a podcast that has mostly to do with sound, unless you want to get into the marketing or whatever, but you don't see anything happening. There's no video, there's no images. The most important thing is the sound quality. And you can look into this with podcasts with the microphones they're using. A lot of times, podcasters will list all of their equipment, and you can look at their microphones, read reviews, see if they could have gone with a more expensive one, or even if there was one that is comparable in price but has better quality. You can also take a look at the audio interface they're using or the mixing board, depending on, that's a personal choice on the side of the podcaster as well, whether they use an audio interface or a mixing board. They both sound different, they both have pros, they both have cons. Another thing to look at is the post-production editing. Is there a fan going on in the background? Is there a noise you can hear? Maybe the computer is on and you can hear that running in the background, that low hum, that's just so irritating. A lot of times I'll listen to a podcast and about 10 minutes in, for 30 seconds, you'll hear the computer fan boot up because it's been on for so long and needs to cool down. And that's something that can easily be fixed either by just moving the computer to another place and getting a longer cable, or using editing software, audio editing software, to just take that noise out altogether by eliminating certain frequencies. Another thing you can look at is there ambient noise going on in the background, or are there random sounds? Can you hear a dog barking on the street? All these things can either be edited out in post-production or prevented even before the recording begins. If there's a fan on their computer that goes off in the middle of the recording session, they should have put that computer outside and they can get a longer cable to come in to connect to their microphones. If there's even a low dim, a lot of times you can hear like the lights, if they have certain kinds of lights, fluorescent lights do this all the time. You can edit that out using post-production software. Even free software like Audacity does it really, really well and automatically. So there's no excuse. And the last piece of technical quality also sort of segues us into the artistic quality, and that's vocal quality and resonance. Does the speaker have a booming voice? Is it too noisy? Is it high and tinny? Is it nasally? Is it low? Does it have a nice chest resonance? Or does the person speak through their sinuses? This segues us into artistic quality, but it is important to keep it in technical quality, because there are things you can point at and say, that's not good, that is good. If the person has a cold, just reschedule it for a few days later. You don't have to get it right away. Your fans will forgive you if it's 3 days late. get some vitamin C, talk to a doctor, you'll be fine. And that leads us directly into art quality. So we talked a little bit about vocal resonance and quality of your speech. You can also look at diction. Does the person stutter a lot? This also brings us back into post-production. Do they stammer a bunch without going back to the beginning? You can always restart your sentence and just cut out the one that you messed up. You can also look at storytelling. What kind of podcast is this? Is this a true crime podcast? Are there characters involved? Is it fiction? Is it nonfiction? It's very, very important to tell a story that starts from one point and finishes at an end point. Characters can grow, characters can develop. Even if you don't have fictional characters, if it's just you and a friend riffing together, there needs to be conflict and change. If you have a disagreement, go with it. Do the podcasters disagree on something, then they say, well, whatever, we'll talk about it another time? Or do they hash it out right there? That's interesting, juicy content that fans love. If they just skip over it and go to the next thing, well, okay, that might be kind of boring. And the quality of the content, is what they're discussing actually interesting? Is it not? Is it just something no one cares about, or something everyone agrees with? Or is it a real interesting opinion that has good counterpoints? And the last part I want to touch on with artistic quality is humor. Humor is really important, depending on the style of the podcast. Obviously, if you're doing true crime, you probably don't want to put too many jokes in there, although that might improve the podcast a little bit. But do the jokes land? Do they stick? Is the timing right? Timing is another thing that can actually be fixed really easily in post-production editing. You can add a longer beat, you can cut a beat short. If it takes you too long to come up with that punchline on the spot, you can make it seem like it came to your mind in the nick of time, 1 second later. Were the jokes written ahead of time, and were they supposed to be? Can you tell they were written ahead of time even though they seem to give the impression that they thought of these jokes off the cuff? And lastly, are there good callbacks to previous jokes? If there's a great joke at the beginning that's memorable, sometimes it's a good idea to bring it up at the very end again, or even a couple times throughout the show. And the third and final category is personal taste. Add a piece of you to the review. Is this something that you want to follow? Are you going to tell your fans and your friends that you are actively going to follow this podcast and listen to the next episode? Even more specifically, is the episode that you just listened to worth listening to a second time? Was it so funny or so informative that you want to give it another listen just to find the stuff you may have missed the first time? And the last part of personal taste is, would you recommend this to your friends and your family? Because if you would recommend this to people who trust you, and you're worried that maybe if you recommend something bad, they might hold that against you, and if you recommend something else after that, they might not listen to it. So you got to be careful about what you ask your friends and family to listen to, or what you recommend to them. We all do this. There's some things that we like, but we might not recommend, but there's some things that we really, really love that we think everyone should listen to. So if you would recommend this to a friend or a family member, make sure to mention that, note it, and explain why, and to what kind of person. What kind of person would listen to this podcast? So that's it. That's how you review a podcast, or really any kind of entertainment. You just have to make sure you separate all of the different pieces into 3 different categories: technical quality, artistic quality, and your own personal taste. And make sure you dissect all of the things, all the pieces of the medium that you are reviewing, to the point where you no longer love it anymore. And, that's what happens to a lot of people when they try to review long-term series like Star Wars. And that's why they no longer like it anymore, and why my friends don't talk to me about it, because I've told them that I don't like it anymore, because I've just reviewed it so often and I've picked it apart. I mean, you've picked it up, someone has picked it apart. Reviewers, they pick it apart. The prequels were bad. I only really like half of them, even before I picked them apart. Only half the Star Wars movies are good. That's insane. Anyway, be sure to listen to our podcast, The Media Lunch Break. You can find it on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, and Spotify. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. We're pulling out tons of content. We just did a Superman video. We did a review on, what is that dragon movie called? There's a dragon movie out, the third one. It's got Biscuit and NyQuil and Toother and the One-Leg McGee. Jay Baruchel plays the main character. There's a Scottish Viking named Stoic. Someone the Stoic. It's a great review. How to Train Your Dragon 3 Hidden Kingdom. That's the name of it. It's a good one. You can also find us on our website, which is www.themedialunchbreak.com. Feel free to send us an email and give us a recommendation on something to review. That's at themedialunchbreak@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon with a bunch of cool stuff. That's patreon.com/themedialunchbreak. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see your reviews soon. Oh, also comment on this video down below and let me know what we should review, or let us know reviews. Write out reviews of things that you've seen that you want people to know about. Are they good? Are they bad? Tell us why. Have a good one. I'm going to review this cat. From a technical standpoint, this cat is fluffy. It is also calm, like a potato. You can hold it like a pillow. From an artistic standpoint, I like the color. It's a nice tabby gray and white with a pink collar with French fries on it. My personal taste is that this cat, I would recommend this cat. I would recommend this cat to my friends and family. I would not recommend this cat to my friends and family! Oh, it hurts so bad! No recommendation. No recommendation. 0 out of 10. Alright, 10 out of 10. Come here, you fluffer! You fluffer! Oh, God! Alright, I think that's it.